Hey there, welcome to Fun Learn Talks, the podcast where we break down business, technology, and history into stories that sparks your mind and makes you smarter. I'm Anu, and we explore ideas that shaped the world from empires and entrepreneurs to code and culture. If you love connecting dots and asking why things are the way they are, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's story. Let's dive back into the throbbing heart of the cities during the revolutions of 1848. Picture this. Berlin's population skyrocketed from 172,000 in 1800 to an astonishing 409,000 by 1850. Just imagine the crowded streets, the mix of voices, the simmering tensions. However, here's something interesting. Open plans were sparse. Despite the rapid urban growth, there wasn't always a direct link between the swelling cities and revolutionary outbreaks. Case in point, France during the 1830s to 1870s shows no clear pattern of more disturbances in times of faster urban population increases. Now, who exactly was fighting these revolutions? Not whom you might think. A look into the uprising in 1830 and again in 1848 reveals that many of those behind the barricades were skilled workers and craftsmen, not just the faceless masses of factory workers. In fact, factory workers, though part of the industrial scene, played only a limited revolutionary role. Surprisingly, in 1848 France, only about a quarter of all manufacturing employees actually worked in factories and mines. Plus, their relatively higher wages and the struggle with communication barriers due to illiteracy and various dialects kept them less inclined towards revolt. But it's the portrayal of the lumpenproletariat, those desperately poor and often criminal elements of society, that tugs at the heartstrings. Their daily battle for survival left little room for political upheaval. Yet, their very existence in city centers posed a relentless reminder to others to strive for better, to secure their own positions firmly in society. The real revolutionary force, oddly enough, came from the artisans, the weavers, metal workers, those traditional craftsmen squeezed out from small workshops. The shadow of new factories and the march of mechanization loomed large, threatening their trades and livelihoods. The old protections and guilds were crumbling, and the masters, squeezed by their own pressures, were exploiting workers even more fiercely. Yet, these craftsmen weren't merely victims. They were proactive, engaging in politics, drawn to socialism, and more literate than their factory counterparts. Shifting our gaze to the middle classes during this period, the picture becomes even more complex. Metternich pointed fingers at the presumptuous men, the ambitious new middle classes. They were agitating for their slice of the political pie. In fact, in France of 1848, only 25% of adult middle class males had the right to vote. And it wasn't just France. The suppression was widespread. The positions in European bureaucracies and military circles were still dominated by aristocracy, leaving the burgeoning middle classes restless and eager for change. Among them, the business and financial groups were particularly interesting. Although these individuals had a lot to lose from social disorder, their desire for integration with the established elite didn't necessarily mean acquiescence. They pushed for specific reforms, like free trade and better financial systems, which were not just about profit but also about stability and advancements that could benefit broader swaths of society. But then you had the intelligentsia, the academics, doctors, lawyers, and officials. These were the voices of the middle classes, highly educated and continuously exposed to radical ideas. They felt the sting of repression more acutely than most, particularly the students who were often hemmed in by stringent police surveillance and censorship. By the 1840s, the frustration was palpable. The higher education system was spewing out more professionals than the market could absorb, jobs were scarce, and the absolutist controls on journalism, education, and legal practices added fuel to the smoldering discontent. What's surprising is the convergence of these varied strands of society, each with its own pressures and agendas, into the broader narrative of revolution and reform. The conditions were ripe, the players were diverse, and the outcomes were anything but predictable. Interesting, right? Let's keep going. As we delve into the conclusion of this analysis of pre-revolutionary tension in 19th century Europe, it becomes evident that the stark difference between Britain's response and that of other European powers like Austria, France, and Prussia played a pivotal role in the resultant peace or upheaval experienced by these nations. Britain, endowed with a flexible constitution and a forward thinking aristocracy, managed to quell potential revolution through tactful concessions and economic reforms. Sir Robert Peel's policies in the 1840s, which spurred economic growth and managed to keep prices in check, along with the Great Reform Act of 1832, which managed to placate a substantial segment of the middle class, exemplify proactive governance. These measures were not just economic band-aids but strategic, preventive steps that diffused social tensions and averted the path to revolution. They underscore a vital lesson on the importance of timely and adequate reform in the face of growing social unrest. Now, let's ponder the broader picture our discussion paints. The European states of the 1840s, without exception, faced mounting pressures, from rising food prices to an economic downturn impacting all sectors of society. Yet the responses were markedly diverse. While Britain adapted and reformed, other monarchies clung rigidly to the status quo until it was too late, leading to widespread discontent and, eventually, upheaval. This divergence brings to light a crucial consideration. The ability of a state to foresee and react to the needs of its people is fundamental to maintaining order and preventing chaos. It's a reminder that societal fractures often begin in the quiet moments of economic distress and can rapidly expand under the weight of an unresponsive system. Returning to the early descriptions of regimes in Lombardy, Venetia, where the very framework of justice was handicapped by the absence of habeas corpus, and where jobs, scant as they were, often did not go to the most deserving. It's clear that the seeds of discontent were nurtured by mismanaged governance and unequal opportunities. The people in these regions did not initially seek revolution. They sought fairness and opportunity, basic requirements any government ought to provide to maintain order and contentment. As we reflect on these historical scenes, the relevance to our own times cannot be overstated. Economic disparities, social injustices, and governance that fails to adapt to the needs of the people remain central themes in today's global socio-political landscape. The past is indeed a mirror to our present, revealing repeating patterns that urge us to consider how we might do better. So, what can we take away from all this? First, it's the vital role of prescient leadership in times of crisis. Leadership that not only responds to immediate crises but also anticipates future challenges and works diligently to avert them. Second, the undeniable impact of economic policies that do not merely react to market forces but actively shape them to create stability and equitable growth. And third, the importance of inclusivity in governance, ensuring that every segment of society feels represented and valued. In closing, let this dive into history serve not merely as a reflection on the past, but as a lens to view and improve our approach to contemporary challenges. May we be inspired by Britain's example of flexibility and foresightedness, and be wary of the dire consequences seen in other nations that resulted from their reluctance to adapt and reform. Let us strive for a society where justice and opportunity are not the privileges of a few, but the rights of all. That's it for today's episode on Fun Learn Talks, where stories from business, technology, and history keep your curiosity alive. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to follow, rate, or share it with a fellow curious mind. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or connect with us online. I'm Anu, and I'll catch you next time, right here on Fun Learn Talks. Until then, keep learning, keep wondering.